I think we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau Civic Affairs Forum on workforce housing. I'm Matt Guichard. I'm honored to be the chair of the Civic Affairs Committee for the Chamber. Just want to initially tell you that the role of Civic Affairs, it's informative sessions focused on matters of economic development as well as local and state governmental topics. Now that fits right into our chamber role, which is supporting and growing business in the Walnut Creek region through advocacy and inclusive economic and business development. As I said, our topic today is workforce housing, and a number of people are wondering, what is workforce housing? I'm going to let our panelists say, but initially it is the idea of providing workspace for our workers. And we hear all the time in Walnut Creek that lots of people who work in Walnut Creek and the area can't afford to work in Walnut Creek. So we want to discuss those things. I'm very pleased to have panelists here. We have Chad Silver, Chief Operating Officer, Kaiser; Ronda, Carlson, Corporate Development Officer, Habitat for Humanity; Brad Griggs, Managing Partner, Blake Griggs Properties; and Erika, Vandenbrande. She's the Community Development Director for the City of Walnut Creek. So welcome, everyone, and thanks for participating. I want to start off with introducing Chad to kick off the session, and Chad is going to frame the issue from an employer's perspective, and he's going to work with Ronda on this. And I do want to say that they're actually boots on the ground people. They have done things towards solving this issue of workforce. So Chad, you're on.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And good morning. And thank you to the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you today. As Matt said, I'm Chad Silver, the Chief Operating Officer of Kaiser Walnut Creek Medical Center. And Ronda?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ronda Carlson. I'm Corporate Development Officer with Habitat for Humanity, East Bay, Silicon Valley.
So we're here to share with you the importance of affordable housing and highlight a very special neighborhood being built right here in Walnut Creek, Esperanza's Place. Next slide. Esperanza's Place is nestled in a charming area of Walnut Creek, perfectly alongside the BART Contra Costa Transit Center. Some of you might recognize this aerial view. It has 42 beautiful townhomes, ranging from 1 to 4 bedrooms, great open community space and private outdoor space with each unit. It's being built as a zero net energy project, and we are super excited to announce that phase 1, which includes 23 homes, will be completed at the end of 2023.
Thank you, Chad, Matt, Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce, and all of you for being here today. Many of you, I'm sure most of you, have heard of Habitat for Humanity, but you may not know what your Habitat for Humanity affiliate is doing here, right here in your own community. Our affiliate, Habitat East Bay, Silicon Valley, covers a large geographical area that includes Alameda, Contra Costa, and Santa Clara counties. And although we all face very different challenges, we all have the same vision that everyone deserves a decent place to live. Our specific affiliate has 3 main program areas, the one you're all familiar with, which is performing new home construction. We also have a home preservation program, and this is where we offer critical home repairs so people can age safely in place. This also preserves the affordable housing out there. And we're also one of the few affiliates that offer HUD certified financial counseling, and this is open to the public as well as our Habitat families. We couldn't do this work without the support of our partners, and Kaiser Permanente has been an outstanding partner to Habitat for Humanity. We're very closely aligned in our values, and we understand the close relationship between health and housing. So Kaiser has not only provided funding for this particular development in Walnut Creek, which is 42 homes, but they've also helped us preserve affordable housing in and around the Bay Area. And they've also donated 2 homes, which we have since renovated into affordable housing. So to be successful, a project like Esperanza Place requires the engagement of the entire community. So this is anyone from businesses to nonprofits to community leaders to volunteers. We literally have thousands of volunteers that come through our build sites. And all of these people working together are dedicated to building stronger communities where everyone can lead happy, healthy, and full lives. So in addition to Kaiser, which has been, like I mentioned, an outstanding partner to us, we have some other signature partners that I'd like to highlight on Esperanza Place, and that's the City of Walnut Creek, Lesher Foundation, and First Republic Foundation.
Thank you, Rhonda. So I'd like to share with you a few highlights of our Kaiser Permanente Diablo service area. And if you look on the screen here, you can see actually leaders and staff of our Kaiser Permanente team. Kaiser Permanente as an organization was founded in the East Bay in 1945, offering care to thousands of workers at the Richmond shipyards. Our Diablo service area encompasses East and Central Contra Costa County and the Tri-Valley and Alameda County, caring for approximately 480,000 members. And hopefully some of you in the audience today are Kaiser Permanente members. And if you are, thank you very much. This service area has 2 hospitals, Walnut Creek and Antioch Medical Center, with 9 medical office buildings. Kaiser Permanente is driven by our commitment to overall health and providing high quality, affordable healthcare services while improving the health of our members and the communities that we serve. So health and housing go absolutely hand in hand. Addressing the social determinants of health for our members and their communities is really a true priority for Kaiser Permanente. The social determinants of health are the conditions in which people are born, grow, work, live, and age, and really the wider sets of forces shaping the conditions of our daily life. By investing in and addressing these social determinants of health, helping people with housing can truly improve health outcomes. We all know the significant need for housing, especially here in the Bay Area. The demand for housing is far greater than the supply. Home prices, we all know, continue to soar while rents are increasing. And unfortunately, this really directly impacts our low and moderate income families who cannot meet the minimum income qualifications for purchasing or even putting down a down payment for a home. Families that are often financially overburdened by these costs are totally missing out on long-term housing security and the chance to build for their families for futures to come. Homeownership is truly linked to our positive outcomes in our health and our well-being. Making the opportunity achievable to more families is really advantageous to our community's wellness. Kaiser Permanente is absolutely leading efforts to end homelessness, preserving affordable housing, and making sure that families have stable, affordable places to live. So as you look at the slide this morning, you can see several different examples of how Kaiser Permanente is involved. We are so grateful for the opportunity to partner with Habitat for Humanity and other organizations to help transform housing in the Bay Area. Esperanza Place, which you saw the video earlier, and you will learn a little bit more in a few more slides, is an incredible opportunity to build back to our community. Kaiser Permanente is also a major employer in the area, and we know the need for affordable housing extends to our employees as well. Workforce housing is essential to the success of local businesses, for you and those in the audience, and the whole community that rely on these services that provide from these businesses. So I'd like to introduce you to Rose. Rose is a Kaiser Permanente employee and a proud Habitat for Humanity homeowner for the last 8 years.
Without Habitat, I probably would not have got my degree. Without Habitat, I definitely wouldn't be able to send 3 kids off to college and pay their tuition on my one income through Kaiser. And Habitat has given me the space to be able to have home, have space, and provide my kids with a life that we would not have had if I had to pay market rent and do the things that we were doing prior to.
This is really a great example of how having access to affordable housing can really positively impact lives, especially as you've seen with Rose. So we know that where and how we live has a big impact on our health and our well-being. Here in the Bay Area, as we mentioned, housing prices and the lack of supply are making it extremely difficult for families with limited income to find stable, safe, and secure housing. And home ownership, along with the opportunity to plant deep roots in a healthy and thriving community, is even further out of reach. Housing challenges undermine the health of people living in our communities, often forcing them, and this is a big deal, to cut back on meals or even postpone needed medical care. Studies really validate that this is consistently demonstrates that stable, affordable housing is closely linked to health. The result of creating and securing affordable places for people to live absolutely positively changes their overall health and well-being, their financial savings, their academic performance, and so much more. Rhonda?
Thanks, Chad. So Esperanza Place is a really special development for us. As Chad mentioned, it's 42 homes in Walnut Creek. It's being built in 2 phases. If it would ever stop raining, we might finish phase 1. But we've already selected 19 of our 23 homeowners for the first phase, and they're already putting in their sweat equity. And we'll be breaking ground on phase 2 in 2024. So it's not only all electric, it's built with ZNE construction, zero net energy, which means that it's actually generating more energy than what it's consuming. It's a sustainable community, meaning that it'll have solar and EV charging stations. It's our first development with EV charging stations, and we plan to do that moving forward. We've been doing solar since probably many years. We have sustainable landscaping, direct access to mass transit. This is near the Pleasant Hill BART station, which of course helps cut down on congestion and emissions. And one of my favorite things about this community is it's directly on the Iron Horse Trail. The homeowners will be anywhere from singles to seniors to young families, and they're all contributing to a diverse community already working side by side with their sweat equity building community before they even move in. They'll have private outdoor space. The kids will have a play area. There's 2 heritage oak trees that we were able to save, and then each home will also have bike storage. So affordable housing isn't only great for families, it's great for communities as a whole. Families that can stay rooted in their community are shown to be more involved, more engaged with their neighbors, and more politically active. Families in stable housing tend to further their education and build generational wealth, as Chad was saying earlier. And I just wanted to share a story with you that really brings this home for me. My very first week at Habitat, I went to a playhouse build, which is one of our team building activities that we offer. And there was a young man that worked for a nanotechnology firm. He was an engineer, and he had brought his team together to come do a playhouse build and donate to Habitat. And when I asked him why he was so passionate about Habitat, he said that one of the very first memories when he was a little boy was of a Habitat home. His grandparents moved into a Habitat home. And this was in Atlanta, Georgia. And 2 generations later, he's giving back in California. And he said he wouldn't have probably been able to get his education without that Habitat home. So I just like to share that story because I think that's very relevant to understanding what Habitat offers.
Thank you, Rhonda. Really an amazing story. So what does affordable housing mean for others in the community, such as businesses and organizations, such as yourself that are in the audience today? Projects like Esperanza Place make a truly better community for us all. It contributes to a stronger and a healthier workforce. Employees can live and work close by. It improves their physical and mental health. It creates a less financial stress. And believe it or not, it reduces traffic and congestion on the roadways. So how can you all help? At Kaiser Permanente, we believe communities must support the building and the preservation of affordable housing, identify support for renters and low-income homeowners, and really engage with partners across both the government and community sectors. People like you are truly essential to bring communities like Esperanza Place to life. There are many ways that you can help, and so we'll share a few of those. So the first one is, of course, you can volunteer as an individual or together as a group for Habitat for Humanity or any other organization. And this really also serves as an excellent team building exercise. Our Kaiser Permanente Diablo service area teammates had the opportunity to participate in the Habitat for Humanity build days. And as you saw pictures throughout the deck, this is actually photos from our most recent our build day back in August, actually. And it really was a rewarding and memorable experience. And we really encourage for those that are interested to participate in this. And of course, donations are also a great resource and are essential to keep projects on track. Rhonda, you want to share the next 2?
Yeah, you're probably wondering what shopping has to do with Habitat for Humanity. You may have heard of the Habitat Restores. We have 3 of them, San Jose, Oakland, and we just opened a brand new one in Concord, which is lovely. We had our grand opening a couple of days ago. There are two ways that you can help here. You can either, if you're remodeling or moving, you can donate furniture. We even come pick it up for you, and we give you a tax receipt so you can write it off, or a donation receipt. And then you can shop there. There's not only furniture that's been donated, but you also have brand new furniture. We have a lot of new furniture, outdoor patio furniture from Lowe's right now at the Concord store. So that's one way that you can help. Advocacy, you can, of course, attend city planning meetings, support affordable housing legislation, but really it's about education. So I would encourage you to educate what affordable housing does for us out there. It does not bring down our home values. That's a common misconception, and you can not tell the difference between one of our affordable housing developments and market rate housing. So I would encourage you to educate when affordable housing comes up, or if they're building affordable housing in your neighborhood, to make sure people understand really what it is and how much it's bringing to your neighborhood.
So thank you so very much for having us today. We are so honored to be part of a very important discussion. If you would like, please visit both our websites, kpbuilds.org and habitateastbaysiliconvalley.org. So you actually can grab your cell phones right now and you can scan the QR codes. They'll take you right to these web pages. You can learn more about our organizations and how we're committed to this. And you can also sign up for updates that will be delivered to your inbox in your email. We're of course happy to take any questions or comments in the Q&A portion. And again, we really thank you for allowing us the chance, and really also thanking you for joining in a very important topic. Matt?
Thank you, Chad and Rhonda. I am going to ask, there are a couple of questions that we'll ask, and one of them is, what are the criteria to be a successful applicant to move in, let's say, to Esperanza Place?
Sure, I can answer that. We do have, anybody can apply on our website, habitateebsv.org. There's certain income qualifications that you must meet, and then you also need to actually qualify for a mortgage. We don't give away homes. You do have to qualify for a mortgage. And there's more details about that online, or you can take it offline and contact me directly. You also, if say your credit isn't very good, you can join one of our financial counseling classes. So I mentioned that earlier. We have HUD certified financial counseling classes that are either through Zoom classes, or you can look at those online. We have self-paced online classes that will help you get out of debt, help you raise your credit score. And we have some families that work with us for 4 or 5 years before they qualify for a home. And then once they qualify, we have a family selection committee that helps to choose the families. Usually it's based on things like overcrowding, unhealthy home environment, things like that. And then they put in 500 hours of sweat equity. And we have one single elderly man right now who's moving into Habitat, who's not only already put in his 500 hours of sweat equity, but is also helping his neighbors put in their sweat equity.
That's great. And the next question, of course, is people are asking, well, what is sweat equity? So I think we kind of know, but kind of boots on the ground. You know, you don't have to be in the Carpenters Union. Or what? Why don't you just quickly, people just want to know. Okay.
Sure, really quickly, you're on site helping build. It's we have people on site that even if you've never lifted a hammer before can help you build. You're putting actually skin in the game of your own house. If that doesn't work for you, you can volunteer at our restores, one of our restores, or you can volunteer perhaps in our office helping us with mailings or things that we have to do within the office. So admin work.
Gotcha. You know, it's wonderful. I think years and years ago, I recall Jimmy Carter, after he left the office, was seen all over with that hammer in his hand doing Habitat for Humanity work back in the day. So interesting. Well, we're going to have more questions, but what I want to do is just for a timing issue, move on to Brad in talking about, from your perspective, the housing development, data points projects, and some of the challenges that we hear about all the time. So I'm going to kind of leave it to you.
All right.
Off you go.
All right. Well, thank you. Let me get my screen up here and see if you can see it here. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm Brad Griggs, managing partner of Griggs Properties. We are a local real estate developer based in Danville. We are a team of primarily 6 executives that have been together now for a little over 10 years. My partner, Brad Blake, has been local developer in the marketplace before we formed a partnership. You may recognize his name. And the two of us have been in the business now for over 40 years. So we've been in the trenches here, so to speak, for many years. I'd like to just take a minute to thank the Chamber for doing this program. I think it's incredibly invaluable to understand more about workforce housing and the need to provide housing that people can afford. And then secondly, I also want to mention that Walnut Creek is probably our favorite city to work in that it's very open, very responsive, very open to creating win-win situations. And I wish every city was as good as Walnut Creek, quite candidly. So we're very happy to be here doing business in Walnut Creek, and we really appreciate the leadership at the top all the way through to the bottom. So let me tell you about our experience here. So we've built over our careers nearly 7,400 units of apartments. We've done 40 hotels. We've done 1.7 million square feet of retail. We've built and sold over 2,000 for sale homes. We've acquired 6,100 units of apartments, 32,000 square foot retail. It goes on and on. We have a lot of experience here in this business. So we've been doing this for a long time. And so we understand the ins and outs of the business in terms of who we are. Our current pipeline, you may recognize some of the properties here. We built the Via property on the corner of Ignacio Valley Road and the off-ramp for the BART station. It's going quite well, and it's been, I think, a very successful property in the city. We just completed the first phase of the BART station. We completed 358 units. We call it the Waymark. We're emulating more of an old train station kind of concept and image here for our vision. It's a beautiful property. If you haven't been there, I'd recommend going up and taking a look at it. And that's currently in lease up right now. We have phase 2 coming down the pipe here in a couple of years. This is considered the corner of Ignacio in California. It's been a great relationship. We're working with both the city and BART to get this completed. And then it's a whole case study for ULI if we got a chance to do that. So that's a whole different opinion here. I've been working on this property on the Walnut Creek BART station for over 20 years, if you can believe that. So it's been a long time in coming. We just finished a property in Berkeley called the Blake. We have one we finished in Fremont called Artist Walk. We're now in the process of working on a new property in Monrovia. We're heading down to Southern California as well. We are building a property right now in Pleasant Hill called 85 Cleveland. And we just finished up entitlements on a 292 unit property called 40 Airport, which is in South San Francisco. So we have a pretty robust pipeline going. This will give you a sense of some of the images of the properties we've built over the years. You can see we do large scale institutional size properties with institutional investors. So that's been our DNA and who we are in the process. You can see at the bottom right, some of the properties my partner has built in Walnut Creek. You'll probably recognize a lot of those. So the problem today, is we all know this, but we are in a housing crisis. We have found that over the years, according to a really good publication called Up for Growth, if you haven't seen that, you should probably pull it up on your website. So Up for Growth, and it's a great information website regarding the shortfall of housing here in California. Housing over the last 30 years is the shortfall is estimated to be 3.5 million units in California. Over the decade, California ranked #1 in housing underproduction in the U.S. at only building about 1 million units. So it's really a very under supplied state. Another thing I'd like to point out to you here is that California has been adding only 1 housing unit for every 2.5 jobs. California has added about 3.2 times the people than it has housing units over the past decade. So you get a sense of really how dramatic this is in terms of the lack of supply for housing here in California. On the demand side, it's extremely high. It's really, we call it extraordinary. California, we built properties and they lease up without any problem. But ultimately, we're going to get to this in a minute. The cost of housing is so high; it's very hard for a lot of folks that are in our properties. They're really stretching to be able to use a lot of their disposable income towards rent and housing costs. So it's really something where we have a really dire problem to bring in. We really need to bring in affordable housing. So let me go to the next page. So who is really middle income housing? I think we touched on it in the prior presentation, but in California, 37% of all renters are extremely rent burdened. By definition, that's greater than 40% of their income. 10% pay 40 to 50%, and 27% pay over 50% as rent. So it's a big problem, and with rent growth continuing because of the lack of supply, we'll continue to see this probably getting more exacerbated in the future. And then who is the missing middle? I mean, it's really essential workers, teachers, governmental workers, nurses, first responders, construction trade workers, policemen, firemen, medical workers, and others. It's my kids, it's your kids. It's essentially it's those that are trying to live in the community and stay and to create a healthy community. And it's been very hard for many folks to do that along the way. What are the barriers to housing production and affordable housing? First, I would tell you that there's extremely high cost of construction. Over the last 12 years, we tracked the cost of hard cost in the business. Hard cost meaning, all the sticks and bricks, everything from the foundations up. And our labor and materials have nearly doubled over 12 years. So that's an implied compounded annual growth rate of about 7.2% increase in hard costs, which is just phenomenal to think about. We build our hard costs for a project in Walnut Creek would cost us around $525 today per square foot, just for the hard cost. And that's compared to about $256 a square foot in Colorado. So it's just, unfortunately, we're in a very high priced environment here in the Bay Area. And Walnut Creek's no different than any other city here in the Bay Area. Second problem we have is it takes a long time to receive project approvals and to start construction. Sometimes we're in processes where it takes us nearly 2 to 3 years to get a project from the time we identify the land to get it approved, to get it under construction. That's actually fast, 2 to 3 years. Sometimes it can take 3 to 5 years. There are some things I'll talk about in a second related to some of the state legislation that's helping with this regard to help push this along. But ultimately, this is a big problem because it used to be when I started my career, you could go in, you could actually get entitlements within probably 6 months. You could get your construction drawings done within 6 months to 9 months. You could be under construction. You could be delivering the property within about 3.5 years. And if you think about it today, that cycle now is almost doubled. It's about 7 years. And to think about how it works with our economy, we're in an economy now where every 7 to 10 years we're seeing a recession. So in essence, what you're finding is that we're actually only able to build one property, through a positive rental environment or rent environment. So it's a very risky business. It's become a very risky business from the standpoint of us being able to build and provide housing during these cycles. Financial markets and rising interest rates, we all know what that does, and we've seen it. We've seen the impact even this week in terms of what's happening in the marketplace. So ultimately, it's just a reflection on how you have to be very risk adverse in this business, but yet there's things you can't control. So it's a high risk business to be a developer in this state. State legislation, there's been over 100 bills have been signed into law since 2016. And I have to commend, Senator Wiener, others that are there that are helping, trying to make this happen. But we're coming up short. On the right, I took this out of the Bay Area News Group. You may have seen this a few weeks ago in the local paper, but you can see that housing production has been increasing in terms of the very low housing requirements, but they're falling way short of the goals to create 2.5 million homes by the end of the decade. That is going to be really it's going to be very hard to be able to get to that point. But in spite of that, we have seen an increase in low-income housing doubling, but there's been no focus on middle-income housing in the process here. And I'll touch on that in a second. The other thing that we're finding is there's really a lack of funding to subsidize low-income projects, both at the state and federal level. This is a big problem. And under the current financing structures to provide affordable housing, you have to line up. It's a LIHTC, mostly LIHTC is really the way it's working. And unfortunately, there's a limitation on how you can subsidize low-income housing. I mean, my hat's off to what Ronda is doing with Habitat for Humanity. It's an amazing organization. And for Kaiser's support of that, I mean, it's great to see the corporate partnerships and working together and providing that. And we wish we had more of that in the state. But, you know, again, in order to make this happen, you can see it's a lot of hands-on approach to be able to make, you know, to even build 40 plus houses that your guys are building there in North Walnut Creek. So it's a very tough way to provide housing. So there's got to be a better way to be able to provide more affordable housing in a bigger way. So what's the solution? So we've identified a few solutions here that we think would help. This is really what I call desperate times call for creative solutions, not desperate measures. I don't like to think the glass is always half empty. I always think of it as half full in my profession. But ultimately, what we try to do here is try to identify some of these that actually will be a positive. So one is that every legislation that comes through the state, labor is so pervasive up in Sacramento that every bill that comes through requires us to build using prevailing wages. And while I understand the need to provide that and why that's around, it is costing us about 20% more for every property we build to use prevailing wage. So that's a big issue for us. And so I understand that Scott Wiener is trying to bring a new bill forward that's similar to SB 35, which is where you can provide half you can get streamlined development by being able to bring in half your project for providing affordability. But there in the SB 35, you have to use prevailing wage. His new bill, SB 423, is apparently trying to bring forth a similar construct, but where you don't have to use prevailing wage for labor. So I think that'll be interesting to see if that gets passed. But that's something I think would be an important component of providing for more housing and being able to provide more financing for housing, because that's really what it comes down to. I think in one of the areas that we really need to touch on at some point is increasing modular housing production. I really believe in this. I think in the long term, production in modular housing will help lower costs and reduce materials. It's going to, in essence, save production time and also saves construction interest. So it does lower the cost. And there are some really good companies out there today trying to make this happen. But I do think that it can be done in a more production model. And I think ultimately, I think that's the way we can really provide some good housing here in California. There's the use of what's known as SB 330. That has to do with essentially reducing the number of hearings that public hearings that can take place. It improves the timeline to receive approvals. It really has helped in terms of pushing projects through faster in terms of getting approvals through cities. And so we are using SB 330 quite a bit, a number of our developments, and it helps to lock in your also your fees and other things in place so that ultimately you can actually, one of our things is trying to create certainty in terms of how we build our properties. And so by being able to have, the upfront fees locked in, knowing you have a certain time frame, you've got certain regulations in place, you have the ability to sort of deliver the property. It helps us quite a bit in terms of attracting capital and then being able to build projects. So this is an important component, and I'm pleased with SB 330. I think the other thing that cities are getting more involved with is the use of the state density bonus law. When I first started the business, it was always in place for a long time, but no one ever used it. But now it's being used quite a bit. And I think cities are realizing that it can actually be used in a friendly way, where there's kind of a pseudo partnership between the city and the developer, whereby they can come in and the developer can go into an update to a general plan, and can increase the density and heights to be able to provide more density and therefore be able to provide more affordable housing. So it's a win-win for everybody to be able to provide and use the state density bonus law. One thing I didn't add on this list, I wanted to make certain that it was important to understand is that the state density bonus law essentially says if you put in affordable units in a property, you get to have more density. But the problem is today for it's only focused on low and very low. There are components of the housing market. There are really no components that allow us under the rental program to provide moderate income housing density bonus. So it's only on the for sale side. So if we wanted to come in and provide 50% of our property and cap it at moderate income levels, we can't get any density bonus for it. We're not really allowed to be able to participate, only on the for sale side. So one of the things that could happen that could be a positive is for legislation to be able to do a modification to the state density bonus law to allow us to get some density out of providing moderate income housing level. More public and private partnerships. The use of public finance corporations or joint powers authorities to provide public housing that's owned by cities or by the joint powers authority, and build the asset and manage it by experienced developers is really a model that I think has a lot of traction. There is a similar structure in Texas under the PFC structure where in that program, a developer can go into a piece of property and can identify a piece of property for development. He goes to the entitlements. They go through then effectively working with the local housing authority in this case, and they create a structure whereby the developer can essentially get approval to build the property, and essentially the public finance corporation will essentially take title to the property. And when they take title to the property, essentially it removes the property off the property tax roll, and it allows the operator then to lower the rents. So in the exchange for that benefit of reducing or removing the property tax, in the case of Texas, 50% of the units are required to be restricted to 80% of AMI, 40% are restricted to 140% of AMI, and 10% are restricted to the market rates. So what this is doing is allowing for a public-private partnership, so to speak, whereby the agency owns the property, the developer will actually create an entity with the city or the PFC as a partner. They will build the project as a separate entity. They'll do a long-term ground lease, and ultimately what happens is they can provide a lot of housing and a lot of affordable housing. So this is a model that I think needs to be explored here in California. It's been very successful in Texas, and I think would provide a lot of opportunity here in California. Lastly is the use of the Joint Powers Authority Workforce Housing Program. I'm going to touch on that in a second here, but what this does is it's a program that's already in place whereby cities will work with the Joint Powers Authority to agree that a certain existing property, called a Class A property in a certain location, maybe it's a couple hundred units in the city, can become a part of what's known as the Workforce Housing Program, where the Joint Powers Authority will effectively take title to the property against a different similar construct as the public-private partnership, where the Joint Powers Authority takes title to the property, and ultimately the developer acts as a sponsor, whereby they will essentially do all the due diligence during the course of seeing if this property works properly, and then it's being funded through 100% through municipal bond financing. And so ultimately, as a result of that, you can immediately provide what happened, and I'm sorry to be jumping around, but the JPA will actually, because it's a public agency, again, on these properties, you don't have to have any property tax. So by reducing the property tax off the operating statement, now you can actually reduce these units down in terms of income and put caps on it. So in this program, 33% of the units are up to 80% of AMI, 33% of the units are up to 100% of AMI, and 33% are at 120% of AMI. So essentially what you've done now is you've taken this Class A property, you now have moved it to public housing, JPA owns it, and essentially the property gets converted to moderate income housing. One of the things that can really help spur this program, under the current program, cities do not get credit for their RHNA requirements. And we all know, if you don't regional housing needs assessment, but what happens is essentially cities need to get more housing in there in order for them to be able to continue to get the financing from the state and do other things. And so ultimately, by allowing this program, if they can do a modification at the state level to allow cities to get RHNA credits for this program, I think this will go like wildfire. And you're going to all of a sudden see, while you are losing the tax base, you are seeing that ultimately there's been huge pickups in terms of reduction in housing. And actually, if you've seen the results of some of the costs of affordable housing today, you're seeing under the normal structures, the light tech deals, you've seen units that are now being over $1 million to build a unit of affordable housing, which is really just absolutely ridiculous. So by being able to lose the property tax in return for providing this housing, and then also the equity buildup in the property actually reverts to the city, it's a win-win for everybody. So this has been a great program. We have created a company called Opportunity Housing Group under this program. We formed it in 2020. Our company is run by one of my partners, Lauren Seaver. She's the president of the company. And since then, she's now acquired on behalf of the Joint Powers Authority. We've done 7 properties. We've sold over $1 billion in municipal bonds. And now the rent savings that we're seeing for our residents in those properties is just roughly about $4,250 a unit per year, which is huge. So if you think about what this is doing in terms of taking, a product and actually reverting it back to affordability, it's very positive. So ultimately, that's really the presentation I wanted to show you today, and open for any questions here along the way. So thank you very much.
Well, great, Brad. That is impressive. This is. I think we could spend 3 or 4 more hours today that we don't have, but talking about all of this. I think that really positive. Actually, a positive is one of our former chairs lives at Waymark, and she just shouted out, "I live at Waymark, and it's great." So good to hear that. I want to jump into a little bit of that Joint Powers Authority, because the concept is that those are dwellings, buildings that are already they're already built, and the
Correct.
Joint Powers Authority concept. So that is something in the concept. I think we've talked a little bit about the idea of repurposing. So people often talk about that. Shoot, we've got all these office buildings, or we have buildings that are vacant. Why can't we make them into housing? So I think that JPA program is at least a start as to that. But tell us a little bit, because people think it would be so simple. San Francisco, 25 million square feet of vacant space. Let's just make it into housing. And give us the 30-second reason why that actually is not quite as easy as just what people think it is.
Well, I think if you can overcome the pricing, in other words, the price to be able to get in to do this, by the time you buy the asset and you renovate it, there's a lot of requirements that are different in commercial buildings than there are residential buildings for by the way there are the codes, the life safety codes requirements and such. So there's sometimes you have to put operable, most of them you have to put operable windows, you have to change the glass system. So there's a lot of costs involved with retrofitting a Class A office building. There's more opportunity, I would tell you, though, to do this in more suburban office, where you see office buildings that are on large 10-acre parcels and they have fields of parking around it. Those are where we believe there's opportunity to find buildings that potentially could be sold and we modified into residential housing. Again, the problem is that you're now dealing with the whole pricing issue of having to deal with a very an asset that is not in distress, that maybe is vacant, but there's still I think it's worth a certain amount of money, and so to be able to convert it and make it work for rent, for certain levels of rent, that's going to be the tough part here, because you still have to put a lot of money in the asset to make it work. There are ways to maybe do some public financing to this. You might be able to figure out ways to cut down the cost of that, to work in more of a venture with the city, a partnership with the city to provide affordable housing there. But again, it will require some subsidies to really make it work from a true go forward plan.
Yeah, so the big question is, as we look at you and listen to all these things and your presentation of all the things that can and should be done, it sounds like the legislature, which clearly understands the problem, needs to loosen things up a bit. That joint powers authority issue, that's huge. It appears to me that that's one way to do it. The issue that we talk about, and we're a regional chamber. I always like to say it's just not Walnut Creek. So we take in the whole region, and we have a neighbor with a huge piece of property that the government still owns, portion, and that prevailing wage issue has come up over and over and over again, and there needs to be some relief so that we can press ahead with some of the developments that there's a lot of property, a lot of space. We don't have so much in Walnut Creek, but certainly some of our neighbors do. So I think it's important. What exactly does your company do, or can it do, with respect to putting some, getting up there and some influence in the legislature?
Well, that's a good question. I would tell you this: the home building industry is a lot more organized than the rental business in the industry. The home building industry has the CBIA, which is a big organization that helps. They have a lot of folks up in Sacramento that are up there that are working on their behalf to get laws in place. I think what's required is a stronger organization within the rental development business, because unfortunately, I wouldn't call us stray dogs, but we're not quite as organized as the home builders are in terms of being able to provide, kind of influence at the state level. So it really will require, leadership, at the top to be able to come in and to be able to provide a consortium of really well-known builders here in the Bay Area that can come in together and to help try to drive some changes here at legislation. Unfortunately, this whole discussion you brought up with labor has been one that's been around for many years, and we still fight it every day. We are a open shop developer. We don't necessarily have to provide prevailing wage. We would provide prevailing wage if we have to build using government money, as a subsidy. So as of today, we're still trying to not do that. Under the program I mentioned earlier about doing a public-private partnership like what's in Texas, certainly we would be able to build using prevailing wage. We would, that's something that I think is required, and we would do it. It's not, and I'm not saying it's a bad program at all. I mean, I understand why we have unions and why it's in place, and it does provide a lot of good, benefits, and it provides good careers for many people. So it's a good organizations they have out there. But as far as trying to drive it into certain levels of providing housing, I do think it gets a little bit out of whack at times. And I think that there's got to be a better way for us to work to be able to provide lower cost of housing in that regard.
Gotcha. Thanks. We have some more questions for you, but I think what we're going to do is, with timing issues, we're going to move on to Erika, and I'm sure she's still glowing with that compliment you gave at the very start about Walnut Creek being one of the easiest and best places to work. So we're going to move on to Erika.
I didn't say easiest, but it's been one of the best places to work.
Okay.
I'm joking.
We're going to let her talk about the easiest. Yes, that is an issue we'll chat about. And thanks so much, Brad. That's very informative. So Erika, we're going to move on to you, and then we'll just talk about the role of the city, including the RHNA, the housing element, and other relevant issues.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and glow quickly here as I share my screen. So thank you very much. I'm Erika Vandenbrande, the Community Development Director here at the City of Walnut Creek. And I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen because I can't at the moment.
We can.
You
Mhm.
can?
We
Okay.
can.
Excellent. Okay, so basically we'll go through this very quickly here. As you can see that looking at an overview, aerial view of Walnut Creek, there aren't a lot of places that are green that are not open space. And we're largely a built out community. We have almost 34,000 homes, of which the majority of those are single family homes that are detached or multifamily. So in apartment buildings, much like you've just heard about. And that really matters because it means that our opportunities, and we don't have a lot of green space to go in and try and work with others to create, large tracts of new homes. Oops. So in terms of our, you heard about these RETA numbers, so the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. So over the next 8 years, the city needs to accommodate over 6,300 new housing units, which is over 5,800 that are based, but then the state also requires a buffer. And that of these, a substantial number of them are what, we're talking about in terms of workforce housing that are affordable to your average worker. This is important because there are two statistics here that I hope that you walk away with. One is that over this next 8-year period, it's 183% increase in housing production that's anticipated for our community over the past 8 years. And so it means that all of us together are going to need to work harder and work faster. In addition, we've talked about, heard from Brad, heard from Ronda, and heard from Chad about AMI and affordability. But affordability, our area median income for our area is $142,000 for a family of 4. And, when you hear about, rent burden and, housing burden, et cetera, that's spending a lot of money of that salary on housing. So examples of workforce housing in our community. So, we have St. Paul Commons, which is 100% affordable, and it was done in cooperation with the Trinity Center. Obviously, Esperanza Place, and then accessory dwelling units that are allowed within single-family neighborhoods. Essentially, what this means here is that the city, as a partner, needs to span being able to work with individual homeowners and guiding them through the process to be able to get these types of units next door on their single family properties, but also to have the level of sophistication, complexity, partnership, et cetera, to be able to work with our partners like we have here on the, on the forum today, to deal with these very complex financing and building and time issues, et cetera. So as we go into the next slide, I think that really underscores where the city has some ability and doesn't actually in terms of trying to be able to have housing be more affordable. We took sort of a back of envelope calculation for our affordable housing production that we've been a partner with. And it's approximately $750,000 for affordable unit. And this was before all the escalation and finance costs, et cetera. And of that, for affordable housing, approximately 5% of the costs are city reviews and permits. That means that other 95% is something else, which includes land, financing, other agency reviews, construction, labor, materials, and then certainly profit. And I think that Brad went through that pretty extensively in his presentation. With the city as partner, over the past 10 years, we have provided over $62 million in housing supportive activities. So those include loans to low-income homeowners, loans and matching grants for affordable housing development, some of these loans being forgivable, core homeless outreach services to help get people on the right track to housing, Trinity Center shelter services, and then a winter shelter. So that we also have a very expansive portfolio. Some of our tools in the toolbox, you heard about density bonus, inclusionary ordinance, so that we're required, a level of affordable housing to be included in a development, depending on the level of affordability the developer is willing to offer. We also have a commercial linkage fee that helps provide funding for all those things that the city helps finance. And then shortly, we're going to be rolling out permit-ready accessory dwelling unit plans to make it easier, faster, cheaper for individual homeowners to provide accessory dwelling units on their properties. Most importantly, as Brad was talking about, there are a lot of things that are happening at the state level with the Housing Affordability Act and all these, sort of all the numbers of all these Senate bills, et cetera. But essentially what it also requires, again, is for the city to be knowledgeable and to be a guide and to work in collaboration with all of our different partners to be able to help get ADUs to be allowed by right in their single family residential areas, to get the word out and help people understand what that means, to work with developers in streamlining processes. But then also with regard to these new pieces of legislation, to work in collaboration to implement them, because there are things like SB 9 that allow duplexes and urban lot splits in residential areas. But then come this next July, there are zones where office, retail, and parking is the primary use, and has frontage along a commercial corridor that we'll have opportunities to explore that too with property owners and developers. And then lastly, as was mentioned, the state grants and state administered federal tax credits for affordable housing. This take a lot of time to get all that in place, and time is money, and we recognize that. So in short, this is the benefit of coming last. You have to be brief, but you can also summarize. It does take a village, and it takes all of us working together. The city doesn't build housing, but we are a partner. The grants and loans that we have available only go so far. When you look at the magnitude of the need and the funding that the city has available, there's a significant gap, and it's a gap that needs to be filled with partnerships, public-private partnerships, like we just heard about. And then lastly, the city does recognize that time is money, and we're working very diligently to streamline our development processes. Clearly, we have some level of success, according to Brad, in doing that. So with that, I will end my remarks and say thank you very much for this opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you very much, Erika, and it's good to see you've been. It seems like you just arrived a couple of weeks ago, but I think it's going on a year or so, hasn't it already?
9 months, but
9 months. Okay, just get your feet wet in this. Walnut Creek gets lots of kudos, lots of compliments for the idea that we're building lots of housing. So the question is, how much credit on that 6,300 units that we're going to have to build is all these things, including Waymark and all of it. So I think the city, at least the area, was way ahead of the government saying you're going to have to build X number of units. At one point it was 5,800, now it's up to 63. But people in the city are seeing there's building everywhere. So are we getting credit for that towards that number?
Not yet, because these are housing units to be built, not those that have been built. And so this is still forthcoming.
I see. Another big issue, and Brad was mentioning it with tongue in cheek a little bit. He really likes Walnut Creek, the way it works and all, but he made it clear, not the easiest. But we hear that about almost every city. And when Brad was talking about how long it takes from conception to going through something to actually putting a shovel in the ground, and we hear that all over the Bay Area, is a significantly long time. What is it that the city could do to lower that number? Because that is really something when you think about, gosh, 7 years to actually put up a building. And the last commercial buildings that were built in Walnut Creek were actually those Treat Towers. And that was a long time ago. And when I tell people that, they go, no, that's not true. I said, well, actually it is, when you think of the significant time to get somebody conceptually to do something. So I'll circle back. You've mentioned that you're streamlining some things, but what more can be done?
I think that the most important thing for us to do is to become partners early in the process. And so when we all have clarity about what we're trying to achieve, and then we can problem solve together. And so I know that during my brief, but during my tenure here, that we've had a very strong focus on emphasizing on what is it that we can do, how do we get to that goal and objective to be able to create these outcomes, and finding ways to be able to say yes rather than no, and where there are legislative changes that are needed, to be able to propose them, and then to work with council to look at the pluses and minuses, and then to implement them ultimately. I think that trying to do that in short order, because when you look at that whole stack of how much it costs for these different units, time is money is probably one of the most important. And by not having ambiguity and having clarity, it's probably one of the most important things that we can do as a partner. Mm-hmm. I see Brad and Chad nodding, so I'm like, got it right.
That's well, the issue does come up, and we hear about some cities, often hear, say, Fremont or South San Francisco or something. And, we'd love to have lots of life sciences out in the Shadelands, and we're looking at different areas. And many of our members are talking about, we germinated things like Commerce One in a lot of companies. And then once they got big enough, they moved to, I don't know, Dublin, San Jose, or other things. So again, that kind of concept is fast tracking things as much as we can. And I know it's a process that's going to take time, but we'll just keep that out on the table, that's something people are talking about, not just for housing, but obviously for commercial buildings and everything else. A question that has come up is, we have so many amenities in Walnut Creek, and of course we passed a measure to increase the amenities out in Heather Farm Park and all that. But can you talk a little bit about when we look at things, and I think I look at Brad, and we're at the corner of Ignacio and Oakland Boulevard, and we don't have any amenities here. But I know Brad's project across the street, they're saying that eventually there are going to be amenities. We can walk across the street to that corner of Ignacio and California for amenities. I hope I'm not retired by the time those amenities are actually built, but that is a kind of a big issue. And what does the city look at when they're looking at a plan? Is the city actually saying what amenities are going to be built into it? Or because we talk about the downtown, where lots of amenities, you can walk out of Grover Square, but in other places you can't. That's kind of a compound question times two.
Okay, I'll try and do my best with that. I think that what the city does and does best is help set the table, and to be able to identify in our general plan and our specific plans what is possible. But in trying to set that table, then we offer that forward to the development community, to the property owners, etc. And it's those people who actually own the property and those who build it that have the opportunities to be able to essentially gauge how quickly we realize that vision. We're trying very, very hard to go through and expedite things, but the pace of it depends on, again, the property owner's willingness to sell, reimagine, and the development community being able to get financing, to have all the plans, the structural planning, etc., that needs to be done to be able to achieve it. So we're part of the solution, but we're only a part of it. We have our partners that we need to have in place to realize what you're talking about.
That's great, and thank you for that. I'm going to jump to a couple of those partners now, Chad and Ronda, because people are asking, this is such a great concept, and people are so pleased to hear about that. And I think a lot of people didn't know about that Esperanza place right here in Walnut Creek. But then the question is, no good deed goes unpunished. What else do you have planned in the immediate Kaiser, Ronda, people are asking, what's next? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in Walnut Creek. Are there plans to put something in neighboring communities already?
Sure, I can start with that. We do have a 5-year pipeline that is in our annual report, which I know sounds really boring, but we actually have kind of a fun annual report. Pleasant Hill, we have homes going in there. I can't recall how many it is offhand. I think it's 7. We have homes going in Hayward, San Jose, Santa Clara, Oakland, Alameda, Bay Point. So we have many homes in our 5-year pipeline that we're working on. And as we mentioned earlier, it can take time. The processes that we need to go through and the permits we need to get can take a lot of time. We're also refurbishing a historical building in San Jose called the Carlson building that they were going to take down, and we physically moved that down the street with PAC SJ helped us do that. And we'll be converting those into 4 more affordable homes. So it's not a lot when you compare it to rental properties, but when you look at all the benefits of home ownership and what that can do to build the community and the investment you're making in future generations, it's something to think about.
Excellent, excellent.
And Matt, I would add, Esperanza's Place really sets what can be in a really good role model, and I hate to use the word a pilot, but something that we really can model across all of Kaiser Permanente's communities that we serve. Kaiser Permanente is largely based in California, but when you look at the more macro, there are several states that our organization is represented in. And so it really serves as a model that we can now take and spread to many other communities that are impacted by the same issue. And, Kaiser Permanente, and I know if for those that are wanting more information, please go to the information that we shared at both sites. Has a wealth of information of what we're doing at the local level, but also what we're doing regionally and with our public officials.
Yeah, I just, my own sense of it all is this is a wonderful, I'm so happy that we had this, because there's so many positive things that I didn't appreciate. Not only what Habitat for Humanity, what Kaiser is doing, what the city is doing, and certainly what Brad's doing. And I can look across from my office and see the Waymark. But this is all positive. And one of the great things about this particular forum today is we're not talking about what could be done and what should be done. We're talking about what has been done, and then working off of that to continue. So I really think we should take from this that we need to be up in the Sacramento area and talking to the legislators and saying, look, these are programs. Here's what happens in Texas. And let's put that together, because I think that's the only way that we really solve this housing issues.
Matt, one thing I just wanted to mention too, we're building 3 homes in San Leandro, and this is new technology with carbon sequestered concrete. So this is truly a pilot when it comes to sustainable building, but that's something to watch as well.
And Matt, I wanted to make another point as well. I think that, when I talked about the Texas PFC structure, one of the benefits I didn't articulate is that you do not have to use LIHTC tax credit financing. You can actually finance these developments using conventional debt and equity. So it's a way in which you can actually not have to line up and wait for the state to prevent or the feds to give you the money here. So it could be a really powerful program to be moving through the state in a more creative but also profound way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I think, we often think that it's dire, and it is dire in one sense, but there's certainly some very positive things that are happening and are going to happen in the future. I want to thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to our CEO, Bob Linscheid. And I always like to say this idea that Bob always talks about is we call it a regional. So Concord and Pleasant Hill, we love to hear things that are happening in our region, because as Bob talks about competing interests, we all work together. Actually, we're not trying to step on anyone else's toes. And if somebody is successful next door, that makes us successful. So Bob, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Matt. And I want to add my thanks to the panel members, Chad and Ronda, Brad and Erika. We sincerely appreciate your time to present a picture of what's possible, what is happening, but also what is possible in the future. Clearly, our influence in Sacramento has to start locally first, and then move that direction, and we will plan on doing that. So Civic Affairs for April, we will not be doing a Zoom. We will actually be meeting in person. It's the annual meeting of the chamber called the State of the Chamber. It will be at Boundary Oaks Country Club on April 11th. The information is on the website for registration. That is brought to us by F&M Bank. They're a key sponsor for that event. So that'll be an opportunity for us to transition to our new leaders. We talk about our leadership program, which Kaiser Permanente once again has stepped up and helped us. Ronda is a member of the team, and Chad was a day sponsor. So I'm going to capitalize on your visibility here today to promote that. We are recruiting the new class. Applications are available on the chamber website. We had 32 class members this year, and early April, we take on the issue of the price of justice, which is going to be a fascinating topic. So encourage you all to A, be at the State of the Chamber event at Boundary Oak, and B, if you have a colleague or friend that should participate in the leadership program, do it. Do suggest that they participate. So thank you all for participating today. We had 50 plus registered. I don't really know the number that came in, but this is recorded. So if friends and family that missed this, that you want them to see, the link will be available on the site. So Matt, that's the end of my remarks, and thank everybody.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.